Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 4th of March, 2017, and we have a Q&A session today. Your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. So let's jump in. First of all, Danielle Hallett sent an interesting note here. Hi, Curtis. An interesting topic might be troubleshooting. And actually, that's a good idea. As you may recall, I recently upgraded my microphone and recorder. Thanks again for the tips. But when I started using them, there was a low hum buzz in the mix. I could not hear it in the room, but through the headphones, it was loud. Long story short, I spent ages trying to track down the problem, swapping out cables, mics, etc. Turned out the noise was coming from the fan in a new light, which was in contact with the boom that holds the mic. What I should have done was work backward from the new items I have added. I would have come to the light in 3 steps. Instead, I convinced myself it was RF interference or a faulty mic and was blinkered down that road until I took a step backward. Cheers, Danielle. Danielle, that's a great point. In terms of troubleshooting, the best thing to do is, again, if you've added something new to your overall signal chain, I would look there first. If you were getting good results before, you added something new to your signal chain, look at the new things in the signal chain first. What's a signal chain? Signal chain is all of the things from the start to the end in terms of equipment that are involved in the sound recording. So, for example, that includes the microphone cable, the recorder, if you have another cable running from the recorder to camera, or cable to an audio interface, and then you have a cable that runs to the computer from the audio interface. All of that is part of the signal chain. So what you want to do is check each step along the way, and if you can swap out an individual step or reconfigure it in some way, that is a variable that you can tweak to see if that is the problem with the problem that you're experiencing with the sound recording. So Danielle, that was a great point. You actually may use the perfect example to illustrate that. So it sounds like that the boom pole was somehow touching a video light that you had, and the video light had a fan in it. And so it was really the vibration, I'm assuming the vibration of the light stand against the boom pole or something like that, that was creating the buzz or the hum in the mix. So great catch. And yes, I agree. Definitely look through your signal chain, identify the things that are new in the signal chain first, or at least new from the time when you were getting good results until now when you're not getting good results, and check those first. Okay, next question is from Paolo Andrade. Hi Curtis, here are my questions. 1, are the Kaotica Eyeball any good to block environment noise? Well, that is a good question. I had no idea what those were, so I looked them up, and it looks like, let's go back to their main page here. It is this device that you stick over your microphone, and it is supposed to make it so that your microphone doesn't pick up as much room ambiance, so any reflection or reverberation in the room, it's supposed to reduce some of that. It also has essentially a pop filter on the front. You can see here's an example of about the size of them that you're looking at, and so you put your microphone in here. It requires a certain kind of microphone. It's really made for large diaphragm condenser microphones, it looks like to me. And in fact, if we come over here, and I'm going to look at here. So here's another example of the size of it, just so you get a sense for the scale. First of all, your microphone needs to be something that fits within these parameters here that I've highlighted. The Eyeball fits most vocal recording microphones and shock mounts. Mics which are side addressed, so that means that the capsule has to be coming out the side of the microphone or face oriented towards the side of the microphone, and with a long short body having a diameter of 38 millimeters to 70 millimeters, or 1.5 inch to 2.75 inch. It also gives the technical specifications. The short story is I have never used these. I've used other devices like them. This is the smallest one I've seen, and this is the first one I've seen that fits over the entire microphone. My first thought was, wow, I don't know if that's a good idea. What it's essentially doing is it's creating some material around the microphone to help reduce noise or sound that's reverberating off of walls or other ambient sound. It's trying to reduce some of that by placing it around the mic. And the front looks to me like just a pop shield, just a very thin fabric layer that helps reduce plosives. It looks okay. They have a lot of endorsements here from various artists. If I look at the technical specifications here, this was kind of interesting here. For example, if they just did they measured decibels of sound pressure levels with the eyeball and without it, and it looks like there was a difference of what, 16, 17 decibels. So it's definitely making a difference there. I don't know what it sounds like though, so I can't really speak to it. It's if you overlook at the root mean square audio levels, it looks like it's cutting it by about what, 6 decibels or something like that. So I don't know. I have never used them. I've used other products somewhat like it, but they were more they just sort of wrap around the microphone. They don't have top and bottom. But this looks like an interesting device. $200. I don't know. I would check to make sure you can return it if you don't like it. The one concern I would have is, are you going to end up with a kind of a boxy sound because you have the microphone inside of something else? Maybe not. I don't know. But that's my thought on that. Next question. What is the best mic and extra gear to record podcasts on the road in order to avoid background noise as much as possible, considering that I will always try to find the most silent spot? Well, you have to be careful how you ask that question because the best may also be horribly expensive. I would recommend a dynamic microphone if you know you're going to be recording on the road and you don't always have 100% control over the room in which you'll be recording. You'll look for the best places, but you may or may not be able to control everything about that room. I think that dynamic microphones are a really good choice in that case. This is a dynamic microphone. That's the one I'm showing on the screen here. This is an Electrovoice RE20. Dynamic microphones do not require phantom power, so that's a nice thing when you're on the road because then your field recorder or whatever you're recording into, its battery will last longer because it doesn't have to power the microphone. The downside with these microphones is you have to get up pretty close. You can't be 3 feet away and expect to get a good response. You have to be generally within about 6 inches. So the other bad side is that they require a lot of gain from your recorder. So you will need a recorder that has pretty good, preamplifiers that can provide a fair bit of gain. I don't know what your budget is. On the entry level, one that I used for a long time and still have in my kit is the Tascam DR60D Mark II. I generally like this one better than the Zoom H4n, which we've talked about. I would stay away from the Zoom H4n. H4n Pro and H5 and H6 are pretty good. But the Mark II version of the Tascam DR60D seems to do a pretty nice job. So nicest, I guess, if I could look up the Aton Kantar, this would be the nicest, but I think you'll see very quickly why this is not very practical. I think that this recorder the X3 runs at about, the page is having a hard time loading. I don't know what's going on. It runs about $16,000 as I recall, but it's a beautiful piece of machinery. But I don't think that's really what you meant, and I doubt that that's within the price range. So we'll leave it at that. I hope that helps, Paolo. All right, J.H. Brooks Photography asks, I've been using a short shotgun mic, Audio Technica ATA75R into a Zoom H4n for indoor dialogue. I try to get the mic as close as possible, usually boomed overhead just out of frame. That's great. But the recorded vocals don't seem to have the full body tone I'm looking for. Is there any way to add that vocal depth in post through EQ, or should I look at using different gear or techniques? I have not used the Audio Technica A75R. If I'm not mistaken, that's a kind of a entry to mid-level shotgun microphone. I think I've heard a lot of people talk about it. They seem to like it. And it sounds like technique-wise you're using it right. I don't know if you're running into situations where you're getting a lot of reverb in the room, or you're trying to make it sound more bassy. I'm not entirely following what you're looking for there. But here are some thoughts here. So in Adobe Audition, you could certainly use an EQ plugin to help it sound richer. And you'll notice here, if I go into the parametric equalizer, so I just come up here to Effects, Filter and EQ, Parametric Equalizer, and I choose the Vocal Enhancer preset, you'll notice here that it adds, not only does it have this high-pass filter to roll off the kind of the low-frequency rumbling sounds, but it also boosts the 110 hertz frequency by 6 decibels, by quite a lot. So let me just play through a little bit of this dialogue from myself from a previous video with this on and with it off, and you can hear a difference here. First with it off. Why might you want to make your sound louder? Well, we talked in the last episode, which you can see over here, about how to set the gain or the input level on your audio recording so that when the talent are talking or person's talking, if they suddenly get very loud or... Okay, so I don't know if you can hear a lot of that difference. You're probably going to need headphones to really hear the difference there, but you can do something like this. I would start with this preset and kind of tweak it from there. I don't understand why they boost the high frequencies so much. Adding a little bit of air is a fine thing to do, but I don't know that you need 13 decibels of it. I guess Fletcher Munson curves, you don't hear as much. I don't know. Whatever that is. I usually pull that down quite a bit and work with the 110 hertz a little bit. There's also this dip here at 291 hertz, usually around 300 hertz. If you can pull some of that down, it eliminates some of the sort of boxy sound that you can sometimes get, especially in men's voices and certain rooms. So that's, you can certainly play around with that a little bit more. I would say, I'm not sure that mic is kind of like I don't know with that mic. Try this EQ, see what happens. I think that's probably the best place to start. To get, what I find is with a lot of the kind of decent to mid-range XLR mics, they each have their own character and they sound a little bit different. But to really get to a point where you feel like you're getting a lot of bang for your buck, I find you have to spend a fair bit more money. And then even then, the differences may or may not be that big. It really depends. It's a difficult question. I would not trade out your microphone just yet. Try some EQ in post and see where you get. All right, good luck. Next is from Mark Latani. I'm going to jump down here. Actually, I'm going to jump down here. Mark, you have a question here that's not audio related, but let me just give you maybe a 2-second or a very short description on what I would do. So he's using a Canon 5D Mark IV camera to shoot interview shots. And also has an Aperture Fine HD 7-inch monitor, so he can see a little bit better. And it has some exposure tools and things of that nature. The problem with the Aperture Fine HD, VS2 Fine HD, is that the color doesn't match the screen on most cameras. And so I would not worry as much. You set the brightness so that it matches the camera screen generally. The contrast is a problem on that monitor, and they know about it. I've talked to Ted over at Aperture about it. The contrast setting doesn't do a whole lot, and the contrast or the gamma curve that they're using on that monitor is pretty extreme. So I couldn't get it to match any of my cameras exactly. And they're working on a firmware to change it so that contrast setting does let you tweak that gamma curve a little bit and make it less contrasty so it can match your camera screen. So I would hold off on that one. Saturation, again, I would just try to match the camera. But before all that, there are RGB settings, red, green, and blue color channel settings. I would use that. Point your camera at a target, ideally a black, gray, and white target, and use that target to tweak the red, green, and blue channels until you can get it roughly, well, as best you can, matching your camera. Then I would come back and set the brightness and the saturation, pointing at a more colorful scene. So that's kind of the high level mark. I don't know exactly how to get it to match the 5D Mark IV, but that's the technique that I used on matching it to my Sony a6000 and to match my Panasonic GH4 as much as possible. Again, the contrast will never match exactly until they get that firmware taken care of. The next thing is what I really want to address here in the sound session. Why is it that as soon as I was ready to shoot and turned off all sound sources, that the local snow removal guy came by with a gasoline blower? That is fairly typical. I've had that happen before. In fact, on a shoot last summer, I remember it was me with my friend Levi. He was DPing. I was a sound guy. And then we had a production assistant, Josh, who was helping out with, various things. And right as we sat down and started to record, it was in a residential neighborhood. Right as we sat down to start to record this guitar maker, we heard these really strange sounds outside, and it was coming through on the mic too. So it was pretty loud, and it was just periodic. And so Levi, the director, sent the production assistant out to find out what was going on and to see if we could maybe manage that sound in some way. It turns out it was a kid. They were the family was having, next door or 2 houses down, was having a kind of a yard sale, and some kid was running around blowing on this like toy instrument of some sort. He was able to kindly ask them to stop, and the kid stopped, and it was no problem. And we were able to start shooting. So with a snow removal guy, I don't know. You may have to just wait it out, but it's nice if you can have a production assistant or one of your crew go out, whether that's you or someone else. A lot of us are single person teams, so we'd have to go take care of that ourselves. But 2 options that I know of: go out and talk to the person, be as kind as you can about it, and ask them if they could maybe just hold off for a few minutes while you're shooting. Or number 2, you may just have to wait it out. So those things happen. It happens to all of us. All right, and the final question for this week's session, and I apologize, I don't know exactly how to pronounce your name. Gowri? Hi, Curtis. First of all, thank you for putting up your videos about recording sound. I've seen them all, and as an aspiring sound designer, still studying now, I've learned many things from your videos. I'm doing sync sound for a short film now, and I have recorded the dialogue using a Rode NTG2 mic. I will need to do ADR for some shots and also voiceovers. Can I use the same Rode NTG2 for the ADR? Which mic do you think I should be using for voiceovers? Great question. So first of all, for those that don't know what ADR, it's automated dialogue replacement. The A can sometimes stand for other things, but the idea is that, and this is done a lot in feature films, higher budget films, when the production sound that they record is not salvageable, often they'll have the actors come back into the studio, they'll play the scene over, and have the actors re-record their voices to match the scene that they're trying to replace the sound for. So I would definitely try to use the same microphone for the ADR, especially if you're going to use some of the production audio, because then you'll get relatively similar sound. You're always going to pick up a little bit of the ambiance for wherever you're shooting in the actual production audio. And ideally, when you're recording the ADR, you'll be in a space that is pretty well treated, so you're not fighting with reverberation and other things like that and ambient noise. So, yeah, I would definitely use the same mic if you can, and then use room tone behind the ADR, which I hopefully you recorded some room tone when you were out shooting the piece, and then you can put that behind the ADR to get it to match pretty nicely. Now, for voiceovers, you could use the same mic. But oftentimes you can use a different mic too, and that's okay, because I think a lot of times when you're using a voiceover, unless that voiceover talent is also going to be in the video at some point or in the movie at some point, it's okay to make them sound different. And in that case, again, that depends on so many things. Again, if you're going to be in a room that's not very well treated, a dynamic mic, a large diaphragm, or I don't know if this is a large diaphragm. It's not like a large diaphragm condenser, but a dynamic microphone, something like this, could be a good choice. A large diaphragm condenser mic can be a good choice if your room sounds pretty good, or you have the talent work up nice and close on it. So those are some thoughts I have there. So you could use the NTG2 as well. Again, if you have a space that's that works pretty well for audio recording. It doesn't have lots of audio problems with it and lots of ambient noise. So I hope that's helpful for you. Thank you for those questions. Thanks everybody for your questions, and I hope you're having a good time learning and making better sound recordings every day. We'll talk to you again soon.